hold on to your hats. Tax reform is coming.
We're here today to continue this great economic revival.
This is welcome news. They're going to have a dramatic tax cut. I think that's music to people's ears.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly are finishing up their first joint tour of the Mexican border.
Ideally, the best place for us to pick up these illegal criminals is in jails and prisons. If they don't do that, then we have to go into neighborhoods. We have to go into courthouses.
People don't have a right to come unlawfully and then commit crimes and then complain about being deported.
We're learning more about the suspected extremist believed to be behind a deadly sneak attack on police officers in Paris.
Karim Shirfi, a French native, but with a lengthy record. A handwritten note defending ISIS was found on his body.
We have to fight terrorism every single day. I want those suckers dead.
A victory for President Trump. This is something Donald Trump took a particular personal interest in, and he made it happen.
Here on the couch with us.
Sneaking through the
First time we've all been together. How about this?
No, I am so thrilled to have both you on the couch. And Henry, Connell McShane. It is going to be 4 hours of fun. You guys ready?
Great. I'm leaving right after. I'm going to Palm Beach to talk about 42 Faith and go do a signing, right? Well, here's the deal.
Took him 40 seconds to talk about his own book.
Here's the deal, though.
Play ball!
I'm setting that up. Play ball. I'm setting that up because tomorrow I'm going to stay in Palm Beach and I'm going to be on the show. I'm going to do a diner segment.
What?
Yeah.
And Henry's doing a diner?
Abby has been talking about this all morning. Like, do you really know what you're doing? She's got the...
She can walk you through it. She's the expert in diners.
So what time you're going and what are you doing and what are the segments going to be?
How good are your pancaking skills?
See, that's the thing. She is such a perfectionist. Wow. So we're going to be talking
about
that all morning.
What diner is it? Give people
It's called Benny's on the Beach in Lake Worth, Florida, right near Palm Beach. We're going to be getting tips from Abby about how to do a diner segment. She's such a perfectionist. She's so competitive. You have no idea off the air about are you really going to do a good job?
She was digging at you right before.
She was digging.
But you will be fabulous. You'll be fabulous.
She says that sort of
I can't wait. But we do have a lot of news to get to with Attorney General Jeff Sessions and DHS Secretary John Kelly. They've been on the border the past 2 days in El Paso and then in San Diego, really to show compliance with federal immigration laws or lose Fed funding. That's really what the deal is, right?
They're going after these sanctuary cities. This is no surprise, okay? This is something that Donald Trump talked about again and again as a candidate in the transition. He said, once I take office, we're going to jump all over this, Colin.
Here's the Attorney General talking about it in San Diego.
Today, the Department of Justice sent letters to 9 jurisdictions that were identified by the Obama administration as having policies that potentially violate federal law and which receive millions of dollars in federal grants. These jurisdictions have until June 30th to send their legal justifications for why they are not in violation of federal law, and the state of California is one of these jurisdictions. Sanctuary jurisdictions put criminals back on the streets. They help these gangs to refill their ranks and puts innocent life, including the lives of countless law-abiding immigrants, in danger by refusing to share vital information with federal law enforcement. Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. So there you have 9 sanctuary cities, right, where the federal government's basically going in a carrot and stick approach and basically say, hey, you get yourself in line with the law here or you lose your money. And that's what it's all about.
We've got the map right there. They're all across the country. And supporters of these sanctuary cities will often say, these don't exist. This is fake. You know, the president is making something up. And yet there are these cities where, you know, basically these illegals can be getting away with murder, literally, as we saw with Keith Stein.
I mean, all Jeff Sessions is saying is, we want to bring law and order back to this country. If you are here and you commit a crime, then you need to be taken care of. You need to be booted out of this country.
But criticism is hysterical.
Democrats are pushing back hard
against... They're making it about everything but what it is. I mean, it's about money. It's about the federal money coming in, but now we're going to hear about everything from race.
Well, and it's also about enforcing the law.
Of course.
Right?
But that's not what they're saying yet. So this is a statement from Kevin DeLeon, from as a Senate leader in California. He said it has become abundantly clear that Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the Trump administration are basing their law enforcement policies on principles of white supremacy, not American values. Their constant and systemic targeting of diverse cities and states goes beyond constitutional norms and will be challenged at every level. White supremacy, Ed?
It's incredible. I mean, it takes this criticism to an hysterical level. I mentioned the Kate Steinle case. I mean, here's a woman who's walking down the street, walking near the pier there in San Francisco a year and a half ago, is killed by someone who had been let off the hook time after time by the city of San Francisco. And so this idea that this is about white supremacy is bizarre. It's crazy.
At the end of the day, it's about politics for many of these cities are controlled by Democratic mayors who know who their constituency is, and in many cases, big immigrant populations, right? So that they have to cater towards that constituency, and if they go in this direction, they're going to get more votes in the next election. If they go in the other direction, that endangers them politically. So you make it about something like this, which you're right, it is silly, but it does change the subject.
Well, that's why you see Mayor Rahm Emanuel in Chicago, cities like that, standing up and defending sanctuary cities. You know, because they want that money.
He says we're not giving in. So you have John Kelly, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who have been traveling to the border, talking about sanctuary cities, but also the importance of this border wall that President Trump campaigned so hard on. And you have this government shutdown that is looming this next week.
Yeah.
And now you're going to hear the wall being sort of thrown into this with Obamacare.
Basically, Mick Mulvaney, who is the budget director for the White House, is basically saying if Democrats want money for Obamacare to keep it going, then the president wants one of his priorities. He wants money to start building the wall. Watch.
The next 4 days will tell you a lot about the next 4 years. We've finally boiled this negotiation down to something that we want very badly that the Democrats really don't like, and that's the border wall. At the same time, there's something they want very badly that we don't like very much, which are these cost-sharing reductions, the Obamacare payments. Ordinarily, in a properly functioning Washington, D.C., as in any business, this would be the basis upon which a negotiated resolution could be achieved. We'd offer them $1 of CSR payments for $1 of wall payments right now. That's the offer that we've given to our Democrat colleagues. That should form the fundamental understanding that gets us to a bipartisan agreement.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I mean, it's going to be one interesting week in Washington.
I just can't imagine that coming together.
I'm going to be in D.C. for most of the week next week, going into the 100 days, which will be interesting. But this, I think, to me, is a story that has almost been undercovered to some extent. We've spent so many time on so many other things. Some of them have been silly. Some of them have been very important. But the fact of the matter is, if there's not an agreement in place by Friday, then the government shuts down. Is that the end of the world? I guess not. I mean, we've worked our way through it before. But politically, especially for this president and for the Republicans who control Congress, there's a lot on the line here. They would take the blame for it.
Democrats that are already shutting this down. Here's a statement from Chuck Schumer's
It's not the government shutting down the idea.
Shutting down the idea before they even start talking about it. Here's what the spokesman for Chuck Schumer said. He said the White House gambit to hold hostage health care for millions of Americans in order to force American taxpayers to foot the bill for a wall that the president said would be paid for by Mexico is a complete non-starter.
That just shows one thing after another. Chuck Schumer has been opposed to this president on basically everything he's put forward. Right. After this talk during the transition, they're both from New York. Maybe they can reach across the aisle. And so here, you know, the White House is sending out this idea, okay, we're going to continue to pay for Obamacare. We've tried to repeal it. We've tried to replace it. That effort failed. We're going to continue in the days ahead. But in the meantime, we're going to continue to pay for that. You pay for one of the president's initiatives, one, the border wall. And they're immediately saying non-starter. That shows you where we are right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun week.
All right. Meanwhile, you remember that United case with the... Everyone remembers.
Yeah, I think we do.
Still going.
Well, there is a new airline outrage this morning as an American Airlines employee, not United, is accused of nearly hitting a baby and challenging a passenger, yes, to a fight.
Come on. Bring it on. I'll knock you out. Well, I'm not going to be silly.
Wow, well, the end of that incident all caught on camera.
Man, Ellison Barber joins us live now with this shocking video on how American Airlines is responding this morning. Morning, Ellison.
Good morning, you guys. Passengers are accusing the flight attendant of actually hitting the mother with her baby stroller. One passenger on the American Airlines flight posted a video to Facebook allegedly showing the aftermath of the incident. A woman clutching her child and sobbing. The person who posted this described it by saying that a flight attendant violently took a stroller from a lady with her baby, hitting her and just missing the baby. In the video, the woman isn't the only person upset. So is a passenger. One man gets up to ask for the flight attendant's name and then to confront him.
Hey, bud, you do that to me and I'll knock you flat.
Stay out of this. Come on. Bring it on. Try that with a man. I'll knock you out. Well, I'm not going to be silly. You don't know what the story is.
I don't care what the story is. No one's heard a baby.
At the end, the man tells the flight attendant, "I can see exactly what you did. Maybe you'll get videotape too and get all over the news," seemingly referring to this, a video that surfaced about 2 weeks ago showing a passenger violently forced off a flight with United Airlines. Now, American says they are investigating what happened on this particular flight, the flight of theirs. In a statement, they said, quote, "The actions of our team member captured here do not appear to reflect patience or empathy, two values necessary for customer care. In short, we are disappointed by these actions. The American team member has been removed from duty while we immediately investigate this incident." Now, in that statement, they also said the woman in the video decided to take a different flight. She was reportedly flying internationally, and American says they upgraded her and her family to first class. Guys?
That's the least they could do.
Yeah, after
Wilson
the fact.
Barber, thank you so much.
Thanks, Elsie.
You know, everyone has cell phones today,
Yeah.
so all eyes are on these airlines. If something happens, it is going to be caught, and it's going to be aired all over the place.
Yeah,
But you only see a snippet, so you don't know what happened right before.
True.
Outside the door of the plane, right.
That's a great point.
All right.
All right, to some other headlines this morning. We are less than 24 hours away from a pivotal election in France. Far-right candidate Marine Le Pen is now projected to succeed in the first round of elections. In the wake of Thursday's terror attack, Le Pen is known for her strong stance on immigration. She's expected to face off with moderate candidate Emmanuel Macron in the final round of elections next month. And Vice President Pence reaffirming ties with Australia overnight. The Vice President meeting with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, promising to honor a refugee resettlement agreement that was the topic of a testy phone call between Turnbull and President Trump earlier this year. Take a listen.
President Trump has made it clear that we'll honor the agreement. It doesn't mean we admire the agreement. We've initiated the process of fulfilling that agreement.
Well, President Trump's frustration over the agreement had brought about concerns over America's alliance with Australia. And another Obama holdover has been fired. The Trump administration dismissing the former president's Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy. He was appointed in 2014 and is known for his work in emotional health. Well, he's been replaced by the former Deputy Surgeon General, Rear Admiral Sylvia Trent Adams, who served as a nurse officer in the Army. Perfect. Those are some headlines this
Changes
morning.
continue.
Yeah.
President Trump about to complete his first 100 days in office. So when it comes to the media, has he gotten a fair shake? Our next guest crunched the numbers. I have a feeling I know the answer.
And he's ready to leave paradise behind and step back into the spotlight. President Obama.
Well, I mean, that's pretty unreal when you look at that graph there, Rich.
Yeah, no, what we did is we basically took what the journalism was. You know, these are reporter statements, these are experts, these are voters. This is not Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer's sound bites criticizing Donald Trump or Republicans praising Donald Trump. This is the media spin that surrounds that conversation, and it is almost 90% negative.
Yeah, and here's the challenge. Here's another graph you could see. It doesn't matter what the president says. I mean, overall, the blanket coverage is negative. It doesn't matter if he's on Obamacare, if he's talking about immigration, if he's just talking about, I don't know, how his day's going. It seems like the coverage is always negative in some way.
It is. I mean, these are the top 5 issues that the media gravitated to talk about the first 100 days. Things like the travel ban, the unproved allegations about Russia, Obamacare. Over 90% negative in all of those categories. A topic the president wanted to talk about, economy and jobs, less than 1% of his coverage.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just look at this past week, Rich, right? So 3 attacks from the press already on the president this week. One of them was on this attack in France, right? And he calling it a terrorist attack. MSNBC, they were really upset about that he called it a terrorist attack, and they went sort of nuts on this. Take a look.
President Trump said right off the bat to a question, looks like another terrorist attack in France. We have not been comfortable to call it that or report that.
The president was referring to, I think, what he was watching on television. And you do wonder, are people going to take what he said as some idea that that he knows something more than what anybody else does?
Rich?
Yeah, I mean, this is a press that is still comfortable with the last president who called the Fort Hood shooting a workplace violence. I mean, I think they're not comfortable with this. The president would call it terrorism, and it turns out the president was right.
Yeah, well, what about the Patriots? I mean, they went to visit the White House on Wednesday this week, right? The New York Times, of course, politicized that event, saying, well, back when they visited President Barack Obama, there were more players that came. They ended up having to apologize for saying that they were wrong in all of this. But were you surprised?
It's such a small little issue, but they're trying to tweak Donald Trump's ego.
Right.
You know, they're misrepresenting the number of people who were there because people were sitting in the audience this time, whereas they were on the stairs last time. It is just trying to sort of tweak and undermine this president. We've seen this on and on for the 100 days. And remember, this is supposed to be the best part of his presidency. It's going to get rougher from here with the press if history is a guide.
Well, I think a lot of the American people just want some fair coverage.
Right.
Reginald, it's good to have you here this morning.
Thanks
Appreciate
a lot.
that. All right, up next, the results of the investigation are in, and it turns out hundreds of illegal votes were cast in the 2016 election. So who was their candidate of choice? That's up next.
Good morning again. Some quick headlines. A possible break in the Phoenix highway serial shootings. A person of interest who's already in jail is now being questioned by police in connection to the shootings that began last March and left 7 people dead. This sketch of a suspect released last year asking the public for any more information. So far, no arrests have been made. And a raging brush fire forcing mandatory evacuations in Florida. 800 homes now at risk in the Indian Lake Estates area. The fire has already claimed several structures. Polk County now under a red flag warning due to dry weather conditions. Emergency crews will be reassessing the blaze later this morning.
Well, President Trump welcoming home an Egyptian American aid worker that wrongfully spent 3 years in a prison in Cairo.
Aya Higazi, her husband, and 4 other charity workers touching down in the U.S. late Thursday night.
The release coming after President Trump and his team intervened, striking a deal with Egyptian President al-Sisi. Joining us now, the managing attorney who handled that case, Wade McMullen. Wade, how do you respond to all of this? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of praise to President Trump on handling this.
Yeah, and I think first and foremost, President Trump's personal engagement on Aya Higazi's case, he deserves credit for that. And he was personally engaged, and my organization, Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, worked with senior administration officials to ensure her case was prioritized at the highest levels, particularly in advance of the visit by Egypt's President Sisi earlier this month.
Wade, since this was going on for, what was it, about 3 years, how much of a priority was it in the Obama administration? Were they pushing as well and just things opened up now, or was there more pressure, as you say, from the Trump administration that opened the door? What really happened here?
It's a great question. So for over 2 years, the case just languished with procedural delays, and the family didn't want to raise too much attention. But once it hit that 2-year mark and they were kept in jail longer than even Egyptian law should allow them to be, they approached the Obama administration and they asked, will you come out strongly in support of our daughter, of our sister? And you know what they did? The Obama administration issued a very strong statement calling for her release and calling for the charges to be dropped. There was a lot of international attention and pressure that stepped up after that took place. And then after that, there was a trial. A new judge was put in place, and then a trial was set in motion. That trial continued at a regular pace after that fact until March, and then it paused. And that's when the critical juncture happened, because just a week later, President Sisi was here in the United States meeting with President Trump.
That timing of it sounds like it was important, the personal meeting between President al-Sisi and President Trump. Is it something personal that the president himself said, or more his team handling that?
So at the direction of President Trump, his team was highly engaged at multiple levels of the Egyptian government, prioritizing Aya's case. But we've come to learn that President Trump himself did speak with President Sisi about Aya's case to stress the importance. So that personal engagement really is key. At the very least, it provided the political space for this judge in Egypt to rule free from any influence that might have been there to convict her. And her Egyptian lawyers did such an amazing job in the court that there was absolutely no evidence against her. And so the judge was able to issue a full acquittal for both Aya, her husband Mohammed, and all of their colleagues in the case.
How's Aya doing?
you know she's doing well. As you can imagine, it's been a whirlwind week. Just a week ago, she was in an Egyptian prison, didn't know the fate of the rest of her life, facing a life sentence. Then last Sunday gets a full acquittal, released on Tuesday, meeting with government officials throughout the week, and then flying home to Andrews Air Force Base on Thursday, meeting President Trump yesterday. So I think for any of us that would be a lot, let alone to come on the heels of 3 years of being in an Egyptian detention. But I have to say, after meeting her upon her arrival in the U.S., her spirit is strong. Her husband Mohammed's spirit is strong, and it's really beautiful because I think that they don't know what's going to be next specifically, but they're still dedicated to making this world a better place, and it's going to be exciting to see what they get up to.
It's a great story, and all the best to her, and thank you, Wade, for sharing it with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Welcome home from us. Please tell her.
Thank you, Wade. Have a great day.
All right. Is the world on the verge of another Brexit? Frexit? How this week's terror attack in Paris could reshape the European Union in a major way, and what that means for the U.S. That's coming up next.
Well, you know, the French election is the other huge story this weekend, just 24 hours away from that now, and after Thursday's terror attack in Paris, which left 1 police officer dead and 2 injured, the election now shifts to address one key issue, and that would be security. President Trump even weighing in with a tweet saying another terrorist attack in Paris, the people of France will not take much more of this, will have a big effect on the presidential election. So that's the question for us this weekend. How will this recent wave of terror attacks impact French voters? Here's counterterrorism analyst at the Heritage Foundation, Rob Simcox. We have former U.S. Army Intelligence Officer Andrew Peek and an Executive Vice President for the Center for Security Policy, Jim Hansen. Welcome to all three of you. Rob, let me start with you. To that question of how big of an impact is, the conventional wisdom is it helps the far-right candidate Marine Le Pen. Do you agree? What do you think happens tomorrow?
Well, actually, I think that you've got to remember that France has been living under a state of emergency now for 18 months. There's been a very constant string of terrorist attacks, terrorist plots, dozens of them in recent years. Attacks like that on the Charlie Hebdo magazine in Paris, the coordinated ISIS attacks in November 2015, Nice last summer. So if this has an impact, I think it will be because it's essentially the straw breaking the camel's back and French voters deciding that the status quo cannot go on, because we have to remember this is not normal, the amount of attacks that are taking place in France, and understandably French people are very concerned about it.
Well, to Rob's point, Jim, this has happened before, not only in these most recent attacks, but they went through it in an election in 2012 when there was a terror attack in the final weeks of that election, and the impact didn't really go the way the conventional wisdom was predicting it would. They thought maybe at the time it would help Nicolas Sarkozy, an incumbent, a conservative, but in fact a socialist one, if you remember, Jim, that time around, and Francois Hollande. So it's tough to predict politics, whether it's here or there, right?
Absolutely. I think one thing you can predict is that this has been a continued erosion of French nationalism. You know, the French are proud. They take their culture seriously. And one thing they've seen is that there is an escape clause from the European Union. The British did it. You know, they saw that this is no longer a done deal. So as French culture reasserts itself, as they look at, you know, the open borders, free travel, the mass of immigrants that have come in and have not assimilated, they say, why can't we be French again? And I think Marine Le Pen represents that sentiment, and I think that's going to help her. Whether it puts her over the top, we'll see. They're French.
Well, you brought up the British, and you're right. That is kind of the lens everybody is looking through this with. And before we go to Andrew, let me go to Nigel Farage, of course, who's become famous for that Brexit vote that they had in the UK. As Ed said before our last vote, break here, some people are using the term Frexit with regard to this French election, for whatever it's worth. I don't know why we need a term for all of this, but listen to what Nigel Farage had to say.
If Le Pen was to win, then Brexit, frankly, was nothing. It'll be the end of the European project.
That is dramatic, Andrew, the end of the European project. What do you make of it?
Well, look, I'm not necessarily sure that's a great thing for the United States. I mean, if the European fractures totally, then all you have is individual member states being subject to more Russian influence and more Russian domination. I think he's quite right. It would have a massive impact in undermining some of the kind of PC culture that will ultimately, I suspect, doom populists and nationalists like Marine Le Pen at the ballot box. Since she has to face a second-round election if she comes in the top two in this one, on May 7th.
It is the point that Andrew brings up, Rob, that is an important one for us, right, for the United States and how we interpret all of this. I think the instinct among many, especially Trump supporters, is to say, yeah, nationalism's good. Look how it led to the election of Donald Trump here. However, is it in our interest, in the interest of the United States, to have someone like Marine Le Pen be the leader of France?
Well, taking Le Pen out of it for a second, I think that the European Union, you have to say, has got an awful lot of systemic problems and appears to be increasingly unpopular in Europe. Obviously, Britain epitomised that. And there is a push not just for more nationalism, but for more sovereignty, more self-determination in Europe. I think these are principles that are obviously very familiar to American people, and Americans should be supportive of Europeans who want more sovereignty, more self-determination in their lives.
Quick answer, Jim, just because we have to wrap this up. What do you think happens, and what would be the best case for the U.S.?
I won't shed a single tear for the demise of the EU. I can understand, the danger that a fractured Europe presents, but I think we can deal with the individual nation states. I think they're stronger without a Eurocrat culture running things. And so we'll see if Marine Le Pen wins and brings that. Either way, I think they're heading that direction.
It's a very big story. We'll cover it some more tomorrow. Rob, Andrew, and Jim, thanks to all three of you. Abby, over to you.
I do want to bring some other headlines this morning, starting with the WikiLeaks releasing more CIA documents as U.S. prosecutors look to arrest founder Julian Assange. The website's latest leak includes descriptions of CIA-developed malware that could turn certain Samsung TVs into recording devices. This comes amid reports that the DOJ is preparing charges against the WikiLeaks founder. Assange was granted asylum back in 2012 and has been living in London's Ecuadorian embassy ever since. And it turns out that illegal votes were cast in the 2016 election. The North Carolina Board of Election reveals that 508 people voted illegally. More than half of them were